like totally burnt orange like that. I don't know if it's just the clouds or pollution, hopefully the former rather than the latter, but it's really cool. Hi guys, welcome back. So as you can see, I'm still here. I have not quite moved yet. The move is officially next week, but I did want to show you guys something seriously depressing. This is an empty bookshelf and it literally hurts me to look at it. Like, not to be dramatic, but I did not realize how painful it would be to put away those books. But they're all packed away now and they won't be out until I finish moving. And so hopefully I'll be able to show you guys what my nice furnished bookshelf looks like. And maybe even a little room tour at that, but it may be a while before I'm finished unpacking all my boxes and everything. So stay tuned for that. So I wanted to continue on from the last video and discuss a little bit more on the genre of the book. You may have picked up on it from the last video, but if you didn't, the genre is historical fiction. Set in the turn of the century, 1900s, in New York City, Jersey City area. And it's actually in the style of a memoir. So right now I'm writing in terms of first person. That could change, but that's what it is for now. And I don't know if any of you have ever written historical fiction or like dabbled in it at all, but let me tell you, it is not easy. It is probably, in my opinion, one of the harder fiction genres, especially if you're trying to be historically accurate. And that's because you have to do a lot of research, a lot of fact checking to make sure, you know, you're being historically accurate and true to the time. So I had to do a lot of upfront research just to set the scene, to understand the characters and what some of their values and motivations would be, you know, traditions, folklore, things like that. And certainly, like with any genre, especially about humans, there are human experiences that transcend time periods and generations that you can always draw from. But with historical fiction, that can only go so far versus writing in the modern age. So you can only draw on so much until you have to be supplemented with some context and some historical references. And it gets even harder when you contend with cultures and the values of those cultures, especially if there are language barriers in the mix too, which I am contending with a little bit in my book. So that is just an added layer of research that needs to be had, but arguably makes it more fun. So I started my research where most people start, and that's with the internet, the thing that's right in front of us, some quick Google searches, and I honestly didn't come up with a lot. There were definitely a few articles that were helpful and, you know, leading me to the right direction. Some pictures, honestly, pictures can be really helpful to set scenes and understand time periods. That is, of course, if that time period they had cameras, or, you know, maybe paintings could be helpful too. But I was coming up a bit short in my research. So I turned to the thing that I've always been taught, and that's opening up a book, and remembered what it was like to write research papers on book reports in high school. And I found my public library. I actually got a library card because I did not have one before. And I did some research on the kinds of books that they even had available at the library and available to check out on the topics and, you know, cultural elements that I was trying to explore in the book. Luckily, there was one library in particular where I had everything that I basically needed. I spent probably over an hour and a half searching the library for the books that I wanted, but I was able to get everything and check it all out and bring it home. And then I spent maybe the next 6 months working through the books in my free time, of course, because again, I have a 9-to-5 job, so that's always a tough factor in it too. And I just sifted through the books to try to find pieces of information that I could use. Honestly, there's probably better ways to research. I literally just tabled the contents to flipped through it, found the articles or the pieces of the book that were, you know, particularly of import to the topics I was interested in, and went from there. And that helped give me a little bit more of a background about the time period, but it didn't solve everything. I still had a lot more questions. Certainly, I did a lot of research with my own family. Sometimes the people around us can help us a lot in providing contextual information that's not always like easily available. I spent a lot of time interviewing my family members, which can be really helpful if you're writing a book about something that happened in your family or, based on a true story. Even so, you'll find that a lot of your relatives may have, lived through certain periods and can give context to what it was like for them. And that can be really helpful too. So I definitely recommend using the people around you. But another tool that I found helpful quite recently for especially asking those pointed questions is actually AI. AI chats are super useful, and I think will continue to be super useful for writers in helping to write the book. These AI chats can be actually really helpful in supplementing some of your background research and asking those really pointed questions, that especially the ones that I had. And I was surprised. I did a little trial experiment with it. I asked it a very specific question that I kind of already had the answer to, and it was able to, answer that question and give me even more that I didn't already have. So I'm not saying, use it as your sole source of truth, but it's definitely a tool we need to consider going forward. I think it will save us a lot of time and research in the long run, especially when we can spend that time writing the book. So let's talk a little bit more about the time period that I'm investigating, 1900s, turn of the century, New York City. It was a very fun and interesting time period characterized by a lot of change, adaptability, industry, huge influx of immigrants, which is where my family derived from, mainly Italy and Eastern Europe. And it was a real do or die kind of situation, especially for the immigrants. The book that I'm writing centers around that immigrant experience and, first generation American, really. And since I am a several generation American at this point, I wanted to make sure I did sufficient background research in that area as well. And that is, Eastern European American, Italian American culture. So I found at least one book, and I'm hoping to find a few more. And this one was written by a first generation Ukrainian American. The book is called Oksana Behave. It's a very flashy cover if you've ever seen it, but it's by Maria Kuznetsova. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's an interesting book that covered, her life, I believe. It certainly sounded like it was in the author's experience, but her life as kind of a first generation Ukrainian American coming from Kyiv to the United States. And I think it first starts in Florida, if I remember correctly, which is an interesting place to live if you're an immigrant. But I think it's really important to read authors, that cover either similar genres or the cultural elements that might be privy in your book as well, or similar. Not only is it great to support other authors from similar backgrounds or even different backgrounds, but it also can really help you write your own book to understand and conceptualize from their literature. So that's something that I kind of stumbled upon, and I'm hoping to read a few more books as well. But it's a fun thing to do too. Like I said, I am learning all with you guys as well. This is just me stumbling along and figuring it out and Google searching and reviewing how-to videos in the same breath as you. So this is really just me sharing my experience and, not really giving you a prescriptive advice at all. Like I said, I am not a professional, but it certainly is fun to share, how things are going along the way. So that's it for today. Maybe next time I'll talk a little bit more about the characters in my book, at least the main character in my book, since it is a memoir. And maybe a little bit more about some of the other challenges I faced besides tackling the historical fiction genre. And I'd love to hear from you as well. Are you writing a book, especially a historical fiction novel at all? If so, what have you used in terms of research? Are there any sources or sites that you could refer us to? Please share them in the comments below and subscribe if you're interested. Until next time, see you soon. Bye.